Krishna, dear Vaishnavis. Welcome to the session of Developing Vaishnava Qualities. Don't you just love that title? I'm sure it's excited. So, what are Vaishnava qualities and how do we make them part of our character? How do we practice them? And what really are they? So the best person to ask is today's speaker, Urmila Prabhu. She has, how do I describe her? Her life is one of service and teaching. She and her husband are in the Vanaprastha order since 1996. They have 3 married children, 14 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandsons. She has a PhD in education, was a primary and secondary teacher for 27 years, and has 19 years of experience with school management. She is the chair of the Shastric Advisory Council to the GBC and associate editor to Back to Godhead, and formerly a professor of sociology of religion at Bhaktivedanta College. She traveled worldwide teaching Krishna consciousness. And she's well known for her books, Dr. Best Learned to Read. And another new book that is coming out that I'm quite excited about is Career Dharma, The Natural Art of Work. So without further ado, I hand it over to you, Urmila Prabhu. Haribol.
Thank you, Krishna. Hare Krishna. Well, we have another book coming out also with Kamalasita. We don't have a working title for it yet, but it's about how to meditate on Krishna within the world. So according to the directions of the Bhagavad Gita, like the light of the sun and the taste of water and the universal form. So that should be coming out this year. We're definitely enthused about it. Yes, Kamalasita?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. How many years did we spend working on that book? Off and on, a lot.
I think about 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and then I'd worked on it for some years before that, so.
It's a long time coming.
A long time coming, yes. Thank you so much for being willing to work with me on that. So today is June 28th, 2020, and this is the Sadhvi Sangha from South Africa. I'm looking at developing Vaishnava qualities. So we might ask, well, why do we care? And most of us would like to be happy, yes? Ananda Maya Vyasat, we're naturally pleasure-seeking beings. And yet we have so many sufferings. Right? We have birth, death, old age, and disease. We have sufferings of the body and mind from other living entities, from nature. But ultimately, we could say that all of these sufferings come from our own bad qualities. So how do I mean that? Why would we say that all of our suffering comes from our own bad qualities? Well, in one sense, all of our suffering is due to reactions to our karma, our bad karma, and all of our bad karma comes from some sort of improper motivation within ourselves. I'm not going to do something to get me bad karma if I don't have some bad quality driving that behavior. So it's not that I'm just like some really nice person and I have all these wonderful qualities, but I ended up getting all this bad karmic reactions for these things that just sort of happened to me. No, it's coming from my own bad qualities. And another way that our bad qualities give us suffering is that our bad qualities skew the way that we perceive reality. As Srila Prabhupada writes in the Prayers of Lord Brahma in Krishna book, chapter 14, that Maya exists only within the mind. And in Krishna book, chapter 20, he says that the non-devotees see everything as very aggressive, but the devotees see everything as happy. Srila Prabhupada talks a lot about how when we're really conscious of Krishna, we don't perceive things as suffering. So it's our bad quality, our way, if we think about this in our normal human relationships. So I'm sure that we know people who interpret things in life as some sort of an attack upon them, even when it's not, right? They just have kind of this negative filter for what happens in life. And we may have experienced this, someone with ourselves. You know, we do something that's benevolent and kind and helpful, and another person interprets it as aggressive. They interpret it as an attack on them. They interpret it as something painful to them. Yes, we've all had this experience, I assume. And sometimes we've been the other side of it. So we've been all upset and hurt and suffering by something that's happened that was, we later found out, was a good thing. Frankly, it's our own bad qualities. It's our lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, fear, etc., that cause us to interpret what happens in this world as suffering. So our bad qualities push us to act sinfully against the laws of nature, which bring us karmic reactions. And our bad qualities change how we perceive the world. I give the example all the time that we're in a room, like I'm in a room with a door and a window and walls. I've got actually a lot of walls in this room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 walls in this room. 7. Oh. And if I try to get out of the room by going through the window, I'll definitely get quite hurt. And if I try to get out of the room by going through the wall or going through the door without opening it, I'll also get hurt. So that means that my perception of the room, if I think that the wall is a door or I think the window is a door, there's something wrong with my perception. If I perceive the room as it is, then I'll act in a way that will be joyful for me. So these bad qualities, they change our perception of the world, they change the way we act within the world, and they're the cause of all of our miseries. Often people say if there's a kind God, a benevolent God who's all-powerful, surely he should make the situation so there's no suffering. Well, he has really, but because we have a wrong mentality, we perceive the suffering. We're perceiving it as suffering. We're experiencing suffering. You could say, well, isn't it objective? You know, if I walk in a wall and I bruise my head, that's objective suffering. But from 2 points of view, first of all, my desire to try to walk through a wall is wrong. It's out of sync with reality. And my perception of the bruise as suffering is also an illusion. The bruise is simply the way that my body has of healing itself. It's a beautiful and wonderful thing. So my bad qualities push me to act in ways that are against reality. The reality is that Krishna is the center, that I am his servant, that everything is perfectly and wonderfully done by him, and I simply have to act in harmony with his desires, and then I don't have any difficulty. And what appears to be difficulty to outsiders, we could say, you know, like even Bhishma said, the Pandavas have gone through so much suffering. For them, it was experienced as a variety of emotions in relation to the Leela of the Lord. But as soon as I'm envious of Krishna, as soon as I'm angry at what Krishna does, as soon as I'm lusting after things that are not mine, as soon as I'm afraid of shadows and illusions, then I no longer act in accordance with the truth, and I no longer see the truth clearly. So it's a little bit of a complicated discussion, but ultimately I'm responsible for my suffering. Very succinctly, we can say that my bad qualities and my suffering come from where I have my shelter. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about ahankara ashrita and kam ashrita. He says that those who are against, those who are asuras, those who are against the supremacy of God, they have kam ashrita. They take shelter of their own lust, and ahankara ashrita, they take shelter of their own false ego, their own false identity. Whereas those who are great souls, right, mahatmanas tu mamparta, daiving prakriti mashrita, are taking shelter of the divine energy of them. So who do we take shelter? Okay. What's our idea of protection? What's our idea of how we're going to view life and how we're going to act in life? Are we going to act under the shelter of Krishna's internal spiritual energy, his own intimate consort, or are we going to act under the shelter of her expansion, riding on a tiger with a trident? What do we want? Do we want the flower garlands and the sandalwood paste, or do we want the trident? So we may think that our miseries come from our situations and other people and the circumstances, and such is true for someone who's in illusion. It's a truth for somebody in materialistic consciousness, but it's not the ultimate truth. Now, what's very interesting is that we do not intrinsically have these bad qualities. This lust, anger, envy, greed, fear, illusion, all these things, they're not really part of us at all. We are pure souls. And as pure souls, we have most of the qualities of God. We're naturally full of good qualities. We're naturally joyful, we're naturally full of knowledge, we're naturally full of all good qualities. I believe that a lot of the struggle we have in this world to like ourselves and to feel worthy of love is because we're identifying with our conditioned nature rather than our real nature. And this identification with our conditioned nature is really painful for us, this ahankara ashrita, because our conditioned nature is pretty much all nasty. Even if we're in sattva gun, it's still very selfishly oriented. But as soon as we identify with our real nature, then Krishna says, we relish and rejoice in the self. We're like, wow, I'm amazing because I'm part of Krishna. I'm not amazing because, not like the demons who identify with their false ego and then just say, I'm strong and I'm clever and I have lots of strong, clever friends, like Kamsa would say that. Well, I have this alliance and that alliance, and I have a lot of money in the bank. And not that kind of loving ourselves, and not loving ourselves in the false platform, but loving our real self, which is glorious. So these Vaishnava qualities, we could say that they're already there. They're already there, and they come out naturally when we engage in bhakti. In one sense, we don't really have to do anything separately to manifest these qualities as we advance in bhakti. They come naturally. And in fact, many times an attempt to try to bring out these good qualities separately from bhakti is a desire for liberation. Adi Purusha Prabhu from Ukraine, some of you may know, he teaches Shastra classes in Vrindavan at the VIHE, also in Slovenia. He gave a wonderful class in Slovenia one time about how he was so much focused on developing good qualities, but the idea was that he knew that if he could develop these good qualities, he'd be liberated from all suffering. And he was thinking, first I have to develop these qualities, and then I can achieve bhakti. And he was trying to develop these qualities as he was explaining through Gyan. So in one sense, we don't need to do that. They're already there. It's like if you have a very valuable piece of jewelry that's become discolored, that's become dirty, or if those of us who use like silver in our worship, and the silver after all turns black with tarnish, especially if you're somewhere by the ocean. That will happen very quickly. Or even I have a gold-plated cup on my altar, and with certain weather conditions, it will also get discolored. Right? So then what you're doing is you're removing the discoloration, right? The silver is already there, the gold is already there, or we could say even more so, the jewel is already there. You can go to like jewelry shops often have these cleaners, sonic, I think they clean the sound. and you put the jewelry into the cleaner and it comes out all sparkly again. And it's not that the dirt entered into the jewel. You know, the jewels are hard like a diamond or a sapphire or ruby. They were superficial to it. And as soon as you clean it off, there it is. Or, you know, sometimes with restoring old artwork, like there'll be some beautiful painting by some Renaissance master, but it becomes covered with dirt, and then an expert art restorer is removing the coverings. So these good qualities are already there. It's simply a question of removing the false ego, removing the false identity. We call this anarta nivritti, getting rid of the dirt, getting rid of the unwanted things, letting go of them, stopping to identify with them, stopping to either love them or hate them, but simply leaving them. They're Krishna's external energy, and they don't have anything to do with me. So that naturally happens in the process of bhakti. A lot of it happens without any effort on our part, separate from just worshiping Krishna. But there are also some anartas, according to Bhakti Vinod, that we have to put some effort into. These are the anartas represented by the demons that Balaram kills, Dhenukasura and Kalambasura, that we also participate, act as an active role in this anarta nivritti, where we're getting rid of these coverings of our good qualities. So is there any sense at all in which we intentionally cultivate Vaishnava qualities? And the answer to that question is yes. Although these qualities appear of their own accord in bhakti or as part of our participation in anarta nivritti, we also work at nourishing these qualities, but not so we'll love ourselves and so we'll get free from suffering, which are concomitant factors, but because it would certainly please Krishna for us to do so. And then when Krishna is pleased, he helps us with the anarta nivritti. So we want to cultivate these qualities as part of our devotion. And this is sort of a paradox, that in one sense, we don't make any separate effort to cultivate these qualities. They naturally arise in bhakti because our real spiritual nature naturally awakens and our false things fall away. And at the same time, we do intentionally cultivate these qualities, but not separate from our bhakti. So what do I mean by that? So just like we're vegetarian, but we make some effort in the modern world, which is full of people who are not vegetarians, we make some effort to be a vegetarian. I mean, there's some things that when we buy, just like, for example, yogurt. So a lot of yogurt in the store is vegetarian and some of it is not. Some of it may have eggs in it or gelatin or something like that. And so therefore we read the label. We're discriminating in our shopping. We don't just say, well, I don't need to be a vegetarian separate from bhakti, Prabhupada will often say, but it's part of my bhakti to make sure that what I offer to the Lord is pure, that what I'm giving to him is something nice. And in a similar way, I want to make sure that when I'm giving myself to the Lord, that I am behaving properly. It should be part of our offering that Krishna, I want to offer myself to you in a way that will be pleasing to you. Developing Vaishnava qualities is also part of our bhakti in the sense of our dealing with the devotees. I mean, over and over again, we hear that if we're serving the devotees that are coming to Krishna consciousness is practically speaking assured. You know, there are some exceptions. But if we're serving Krishna without serving the devotees, that may not be the case. But as soon as we're serving the devotees, Krishna's heart is just melted. Oh, you're serving my devotees. Now, we're not going to be able to serve devotees very nicely if we're manifesting all these bad qualities. And we all have that experience. You know, if we're not honest enough to see that experience about ourselves, then we can at least see it in other people. And we see people who are like, wow, you know, they're hanging around for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and they haven't really done anything about developing Vaishnava qualities. And such people have a really hard time associating with devotees. You know, it's like we might want to associate with them, but we're kind of Ya Hari Bol Prabhu from a distance, right? And you're kind of like, all right, I know that devotee. I mean, this actually happened to me. I was in a temple where this devotee, sincere devotee, but her mood was such that as soon as I saw her from a distance, I walked around to the back entrance of the temple and got in that way. And I thought, I don't want to have any interaction with this person. So when, we all know people, they're devotees, they're chanting their rounds, they're reading Prabhupada's books, they're eating prasad, but they haven't worked on their humility, on their peacefulness, on their truthfulness, and on their cleanliness. And so we offer them respects within our mind, but we don't associate with them. So if we don't work on developing these good qualities, it will be very difficult for us to be with the devotees, to associate with the devotees, to serve the devotees. And of course, what is sad is that often when we don't work on developing the Vaishnava qualities, we blame the other devotees for our difficulty in associating with them. So, if we're frequently having difficulty relating to Krishna and we're frequently having difficulty relating to the devotees, it might be a very good idea to work on our own Vaishnava qualities. I really like Bhaktisiddhanta's essay about a reformer, although it's one of those essays where he says that we should only act as the reformer for ourselves. We should know that no one is without the highest guidance and that the world is going on perfectly. Now, you might say, well, does that mean that we never take any social action in the world and never try to help anyone else? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But it means that first we make sure that we're okay. Because if I'm not okay, if I'm seeing the world in a distorted way, if I think the window is a door, if I think the wall is a door, then I'm not going to be able to help you get out of the room. And I'm not going to be able to help society get out of the room because I can't even get out. If I'm misinterpreting everything that's going on around me through the lens of my own false ego, then how am I going to be able to guide anybody else? So once I reform myself, once I get myself in alignment with the Lord, only then can I act as the Lord's instrument to fulfill his already perfect plan for the world. All right, now how are we going to develop these good qualities? We're going to look at a number of good qualities individually for a good portion of this workshop. It's not a seminar, by the way, it's a workshop, or it's a fun shop. Hopefully it's not going to be work. So how do I develop these good qualities? Well, as I've said several times, they're already there. They're just covered. And what are they covered with? I mean, we can talk about specifics that they're covered with: lust, anger, envy, greed, fear, illusion, and so forth. But all of those are permutations and combinations of Krishna's external energy under which we've taken shelter, right? I've taken shelter under this umbrella of Kamasrita. Okay, I'm under the shelter of lust, and therefore that lust is covering me, yeah? I'm thinking I'm going to protect myself with my lust. I'm going to protect myself with my fear, right? And therefore I'm under its shelter. Now, when Krishna talks about this energy as a whole, right? He says, Devi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Durachaya. He says, this energy is divine. It's spiritual. Durachaya, it's really difficult to get rid of. Once you come under its shelter, I often compare Maya to some kind of drug or alcohol. Thank you, Krishna. I've never been addicted to any of those things. But what my understanding is that people who get addicted, to cigarettes even, or even coffee, tea, alcohol, cocaine, whatever, that getting in is a lot easier than getting out. right? I think we all know that. Even if, as I say, thankfully, I don't have any personal experience, and I don't even know very many people who are, met a few people who are addicted to different things, but not many. But even if we don't have direct personal experience, we know from hearing that getting in is a lot easier than getting out. Getting out is very difficult and can usually only be accomplished with professional help. So because this is Krishna's divine energy, right? All of these drugs, they're just chemical substances. Human being is stronger than chemical substances. I mean, so you could say the soul, and Krishna does say that the soul is higher than matter, but still, because it's a divine energy, once we get into it, however we get into it, it's very difficult to get out. So ultimately, Krishna has to remove that illusion. And Krishna has to reveal our real self. It's not something that we can do ourselves. So the attempt, there's another one of these paradoxes here. So the attempt to manifest our good qualities is efficacious because Krishna's pleased and he helps. So as was mentioned, I have 2 great grandsons, and while I got stuck here in North Carolina in the pandemic lockdown, my granddaughter has been cooking for me every day. So I've been eating with her and her husband and the 2 young children. And you see with very young children, the oldest is 2, that his parents tried to train him, and they're been quite successful at it, in proper behavior. You know, to say please and thank you and to be polite and so forth and so on. But they have to help. You know, they'll help when he makes an effort. So I saw him the other day, he wanted some watermelon and he was whining. And so my granddaughter said, you know, Abhimanyu, you need to ask nicely. So, you know, he's crying. She said, you have to ask nicely, Abhimanyu. And then he goes like this. Watermelon, please. Watermelon, please. She said, watermelon, please, Mommy. Watermelon, please, Mommy. Right? And then she gave him the watermelon. So it's like that. You know, we make some effort, and our effort is not sufficient to get rid of Maya. But Krishna sees that and his heart is melted. Therefore, Prabhupada says, we take 1 step towards Krishna and he takes many steps towards us. He takes 10 steps towards us for every 1 step we take straight towards him. Or one of my favorite quotes is from the 10th canto, chapter 2, where the demigods are praying to the Lord in the womb of Devaki. And they're talking about how there's this huge ocean. So I don't know where all of you live, but I'm assuming that in your life you've seen an ocean, maybe the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific, or the Indian Ocean. And you go to these oceans, or maybe you've just seen some huge lake like Lake Superior. You go to these oceans and they're just vast. I mean, even with the Great Lakes, you can't see the other side. And with the oceans, you know, you're going on that ocean and on that ocean in a boat or in a plane, and you're just going and going, and it's just vast. And so our attachment to the material world and our lack of good qualities can seem just, oh, is the Pacific Ocean. And the demigods say that there's a boat to go over the ocean, and that boat is Krishna's lotus feet. And they say it's a very strange thing. The boat to go over the ocean is taken over this ocean of our faults and our bad qualities by the saintly persons. But somehow it's still here. You know, if you take a boat to go over an ocean, the boat ends up on the other side. It has to be brought back again. Yeah, like Satyavati, she was, that was her job. She would row this boat back and forth across the ocean, which had her end up in some rather strange situations. But anyway, so generally one takes a boat across an ocean and then the boat's on the other side. And the demigods say, the sadhus have taken this boat to cross the ocean, but the boat stays here. How is that? And they said, it's because something very mystical happens. We'd all like something mystical to happen in our life. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Something's mystical and supernatural, amazing, wonderful would happen. So the demigods say, well, that can be. They said, as soon as you approach the boat of Krishna's lotus feet, you just move towards it, poof, you're on the other side of the ocean. How is that? Because the ocean becomes insignificant, becomes like the puddle that's contained when a calf is walking in the mud and makes an impression in the mud, and then it rains that much water. You know, what are we talking about? A fourth of a cup of water or something like that. But those of us who aren't around calves very much, you could think of it like a very big dog, you know, some big dog that makes a footprint in the ground and that fills up with water. So a very tiny, tiny, tiny puddle, so insignificant that one doesn't even think about crossing it. So this is how we manifest our original good qualities. We manifest our original good qualities by working in the process of bhakti, when it just sort of happens like, wow, well, I'm acting wonderfully here. How is that? It happens in the process of bhakti when we participate in the anartha vritti process of getting rid of that dirt by confronting our bad qualities and letting go of them. It happens by our making an effort to develop the good qualities, and Krishna seeing and Krishna helping. Krishna taking something that's insurmountable on its own and making it, as Prabhupada says, as easy as anything. All right, so we're going to work on developing these good qualities today. At least we're going to look at some of them. So all of you should have a paper, a handout, which was, I think, sent to the WhatsApp group. It was also sent on Facebook and many other ways. And let's see if we can also show you how to get this online if you don't already have it. And yes, okay. I'll see if I can share my screen. No, I cannot share my screen. Is it possible to enable screen sharing for me? While we're looking at that, you can go, if you don't have the handout, you can go to urmiladevidasi.org/seminars, and let's see if I can share my screen. I can share my screen. Okay. So you want to be going to this page, urmiladevidasi.org, and I can copy this and put it in the chat window also. Oh, I thought I could. No, somehow I can't. Anyway, I'll put it there in a minute. And if you look at Vaishnava Qualities Participants List.
Prabhu, I did share the link for the documents again in the chat box, so I could do that again.
Okay, there, I just put it there.
Okay.
Okay, so if you go to this page, I put the link in the chat box, and you scroll down to Vaishnava Qualities Participants List, and you click on that somehow, and then it will ask you to open the file. Okay, now I'm not going to share the file on share screen because it's several pages long, and you're going to have to go through the pages yourself. So if I were to open that file, then we'd have a problem because you wouldn't be able to follow along with me. Yeah, it says you go. Thank you very much, Rukmini. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. You have those places you can go to get it. So what I'd like us to do now for the rest of the session is if you can each go through that list and say which of these qualities you would like us to talk about. Which of these qualities would you like us to talk about? And you can just put it in the chat window. Now you'll notice that in the list that we have, I don't have diacritics in this list. And you'll notice that we're using different translations of the same word. And we've done that really to get kind of a richer understanding of these different qualities. So if you look at akrita droha, could mean not defiant, humble, does not make anyone an enemy, does not quarrel with anyone, peaceful, never injuring another. So these different translations help us to understand a little deeper way what is the meaning of these qualities. So, okay, Rajneesh says, always pleasing. Can you give me the Sanskrit? Instead of giving me an English translation or a number, give me the Sanskrit because it's a little hard to find otherwise. Expert and silent. Okay, well, let's look. Where are we going to find expert? Give me the Sanskrit instead of giving me English. Give me Sanskrit. So put in the chat window the Sanskrit of the quality that you'd like to discuss. Not the English, Sanskrit. Mridu. Okay. Let's find Mridu on our list. Mridu. Okay. That means mild, according to the Majjhīla, without a harsh mentality, according to Bhagavatam 11:11, and also always pleasing behavior, never harsh. So mridu also means very delicate, and it's this term is used to refer to some of the gopis who are very young. It also refers to like a plant that you can have like a lotus stem that would be called mridu, or very delicate. So we know that Krishna says that a devotee does not engage in behavior that is agitating to others. And he says that we're very dear to him if we do not put others into difficulty. So we make an effort. Also, one of the austerities of speech is not to be agitating to others, to not have words that are agitating to others. You know, in the modern society, it's become very popular, it's become very fashionable to use very harsh language, to use, you know, a lot of curse words and really harsh language. But the devotee wants to deal with people with kindness and compassion. Now, sometimes, if you're a warrior on the battlefield like Arjuna, you know, you may not necessarily exhibit this. But even then, Arjuna was very loving. He didn't have a vindictive mentality towards his relatives. Okay, we have Daksha, is another one that we've been asked to do. Okay, let's find Daksha. Daksha, expert in all activities. What's really nice about Daksha as a quality of devotees is how Srila Prabhupada describes this quality in his classes on Gurukula and the Brahmachari ashram in Mumbai in 1976. And he says, even if you know everything about, I'm paraphrasing, even if you know everything about Krishna consciousness, you should not be callous towards material things. A devotee should also be very expert. And Prabhupada would give the example of Raghunath Das Goswami, that although he was a pure devotee, totally absorbed in Krishna's Leela and Krishna's nature, still he was very expert at dealing with government affairs. Right? He was managing a lot of the affairs of his father and his uncle. And Srila Prabhupada said expert means that we should know something of everything and everything of something. Something of everything and everything of something. And it's a quality that we're supposed to develop as children in school, to learn something of everything and everything of something, to have expertise in a particular area, and then also to have a wide breadth of knowledge and skills. certainly in whatever area we're using in service, or whatever area we're using in our livelihood in service, we should be expert at it. We think about Arjuna, who would practice shooting at night, right? The story is he saw his brother Bhim eating in the dark, and he was like, oh, wow, you're able to find your mouth in the dark. So I should be able to find the target in the dark. So he would go out at night and practice shooting. And Dronacharya was really pleased with him for that. So it got to the point that Arjuna, when he was trying to hit that toy bird, he was just seeing the eye of the bird, and he'd become that expert in his service. We think about in ISKCON how Srila Prabhupada wanted Yamuna to become expert in cooking. And when they were traveling in India, every temple, every home, he'd say, go in the kitchen and learn. Learn how to cook the different preparations. Learn how to use the different kinds of equipment. Become expert, right? Or he wanted Bhardaraj, and another devotee, to go to India and become expert in the Bengali art of doll making, of sculpture making. He said, become expert in that field. So whatever service that we were doing, whether it was deity worship, whether it was painting, whether it was editing, whether it was managing, Srila Prabhupada wanted us all to become materially expert in whatever we're doing. All right, and we have, let's see, Satyasara. We have 2 people asking for that. Sorry, I don't have a printer here, so everything's on my computer. Okay, Satyasara and Madhya Lila. Madhya Lila is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaking to Sanatana Goswami, which is one of the places that these 26 qualities are mentioned. The 3rd canto is from Lord Kapila Dev. So Satyasara is truthful, accepts Krishna consciousness from 3rd canto, accepts Krishna consciousness as the highest goal in life. 4th canto, fixed in the absolute truth. From the 11th canto, lives by truth and gains strength and firmness from truthfulness, attaining strength and meaning in life from the truth itself. So although we could say this means generally telling the truth, this quality of the devotee goes beyond ordinary truthfulness in life. And in ordinary life, one cannot always be truthful about everything and still be kind, right? We're talking about not being harsh to others. So there's many times when truths are better left unsaid, isn't it? I mean, there's even sometimes people will ask you, sometimes it becomes very tricky. So within the last couple years, when I was in, we won't say where. Anyway, I was in a particular place. I was there with my grandson and his wife, and devotees were cooking for us. A devotee would cook and someone else would come and serve the prasadam. So one time for lunch, it was a very nice meal except for the salad. The greens were all like wilted, and even, I don't know, something, it tasted like spoiled. It really tasted like kind of rotten, and we just couldn't eat the salad at all. But the other things were very nice. So that evening we went to a program. This one woman approached me and said, oh, I'm the one who cooked your lunch today. And immediately I thought, oops, what am I going to say? She said, did you like it? And I said, well, the sabji was delicious. So I said something truthful, right? And she said, well, did you like everything? And I said, well, I really liked the sabji. She said, and then she said, what about the salad? And I didn't know how to be truthful without hurting her feelings. And I just repeated, well, the sabji was really delicious. And then she kind of pressed me, well, what about the salad? And I thought, well, I don't know, what am I going to do? And I finally said, well, it tasted like something was spoiled. And she practically started to cry. So generally speaking, if truth is going to be very painful to people and not going to help them in some way, then it's better just to be silent. So therefore, this Satyasara isn't always talking about ordinary truthfulness in the world, which cannot be absolute. Right? The example that's given in the Mahabharata, I think Krishna gives this example, is you don't tell a would-be thief where to find his victim. You know, that's not, there's some moral limits on technical truthfulness in the world. But Satyasara means that on the absolute level, one is always fixed in absolute truth. Now, this word absolute truth can be misunderstood as indicating something sectarian. I know one person who was saying, oh, you Hare Krishnas, you're always talking about the absolute truth, as if you're the only ones, you know, who have a, what do you call it, a monopoly on the truth. You have the absolute truth and everyone else has relative truth. So I'm like, no, that's not what we mean. We mean what is true in all times and all places and all circumstances for all people, all the times, like the 4th verse of the Chatusloki of the Bhagavatam, that we should look for the truth in all places at all times for all people. What is always true for everyone? And that is what the devotee is fixed in. Of course, the devotee tries to be truthful in an ordinary way, in ordinary dealings as far as possible, but the idea is to be fixed in the absolute truth. Okay, what else do we have here? Sarva Upakarka, okay, let's find that one. Aha, oh, very nice. Sarva Upakarka. Working for the welfare of everyone according to Madhya Lila, works for everyone's benefit from the 5th canto, a benefactor to all living entities, 3rd canto, benevolent from the 4th canto, well-wisher to all from the 2nd canto, always endeavoring as far as possible for the welfare of others, and dedicates his time to work for the welfare of all others from the 11th canto. So this is just the opposite of enviousness and selfishness. It's diametrically opposed. Right? Instead of just thinking about myself and what I want, I'm thinking about what's good for others, and I'm actively working for the good of others. I'm actively working for the good of others. I'm doing things to help others. Yes. So you might say, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? Does this mean that, you know, we're giving medical care to others and we're giving food to others and we're giving money, charity to others? Well, yes, it can certainly mean that. And especially grihastas who are kshatriyas or vaishnavas should definitely be engaged. The government is supposed to collect tax money and redistribute it for the good of all of the citizens. And that means all of the citizens, regardless of their ethnicity or gender or background or species. The government is supposed to be benefiting everyone, particularly those members that are in need or vulnerable in some way, or particularly the government is supposed to be thinking of the welfare of everyone, and especially the more vulnerable populations, for whatever reason they may be vulnerable. And the Vaishyas who are generating wealth for society are supposed to be taking care of themselves and then using the excess to make sure that everyone in society is taken care of. But Krishna says that charity, at ceremonies of yajna, that austerity, and that charity should be done by everyone. So even if you're a brahmachari, vanaprastha, or a sannyasi, if you're a brahmana, you're a shudra, whatever, you're male, you're female, you're black, white, green, purple, whatever you may be, everyone should give in charity and help others. And giving in charity doesn't just mean money, it can mean giving food, it can mean giving clothes, it can mean giving your expertise, your hard work, right? We have in America, one of our former presidents, Jimmy Carter, he and his wife actually go out and build houses for needy people. So they're spending their labor and their time. So we have so many different kinds of wealth in our life. Maybe we have a wealth of knowledge, maybe we have a wealth of fame. You had George Harrison who gave in charity in his wealth of fame. So we should work for the benefit of others. And of course, the ultimate welfare that we can give to others is to raise their consciousness to an awareness of Krishna, an awareness of their real self. And if we don't give that ultimate benefit, then Prabhupada says we're like saving just the clothes of a drowning man. So if a man's drowning, you want to save him and his clothes. You don't want to just save his clothes. So we don't want to simply take care of the material needs of people. That's there. But we also want to take care of their spiritual benefit. And when we do that, we will also feel satisfied. Okay, so we have Kavi, who said, this is a little mysterious, as Shuksastakam 4 says, we don't desire Kavi. All right, so let's find that which we are, but we don't desire, huh? Okay, let's look at this. Kavi, poetic and from the 5th canto, and learned from the 11th canto. There's I don't know if it's something researched and true in that sense, but something I read many years ago that really stuck with me is one of the benefits of people remaining chaste until marriage. The author was saying that when you intensely, intensely love someone and intensely, intensely desire them, but you don't have a relationship with them until you're married to them, then that interim period between falling in love with them and marrying them has to express itself in some way. And it can express itself in great poetry and works of art. And I thought that was interesting. I was thinking a lot about how is it that the devotee becomes naturally a poet. And that when we're really in love, when we're deeply, deeply in love, and that feeling of love, the person who was talking about this, about illicit sex, was saying that the feeling of love that can't be consummated is especially strong and overwhelming. When we have very, very strong and overwhelming love for the Lord, the greatest lovable object, then that love is naturally going to express itself in something creative and beautiful. Whether it's going to express itself in song and dance, or in painting, or in cooking, or in sewing. But one of the ways it will express itself is in poetry. And we find that, for example, in the songs of the gopis, when Krishna's left the Ras dance, the skill level, we were talking about earlier about daksha, the skill level of poetry in those verses is beyond comparison. There's all these internal rhymes and internal uses of alliteration and similar syllables. And they're speaking these verses presumably spontaneously. So most of us can't do that. Most of us, when we're speaking spontaneously, like I have an outline for this class, I've taught it many times before, but I haven't memorized the words, and every time I teach it's a little different. There's some spontaneity in my teaching, and for me to be able to teach this class in verse, whoa, I mean, I write poetry, folks, but I don't think I could teach this class in verse. To just spontaneously speak things, just even to speak them in meter, and to speak them in meter and rhyme. And then with literary ornaments, right? Personification, hyperbole, consonants, assonance, so forth and so on. You know, to add all the literary ornaments while I'm speaking, whoa, how could one do that? So the gopis are doing that because they have so much love for Krishna that the love is coming out as poetry. So this kavitam that we don't desire, but that is what I understand. It's a kind of, materially, it's a kind of sense gratification. Just like in this world, people like to listen to beautiful music. I think poetry has gone a little bit out of the public sphere in 2020. That not that many people sit around listening to poetry. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't believe so. But people do listen to poetry in the form of music. Now, of course, a lot of music that's come out today probably isn't particularly poetic, but very good musicians are writing poetry and putting it to music, and the music is adding a dimension of poetry. The melody of the music is adding to the melody of the words. And so this kind of enjoyment, this sort of sense gratification, separate from Krishna, is not desired by the devotee. The devotee wants to express their poetry in relation to Krishna. This devotee asked me a question about truth. Wouldn't it be helpful feedback to tell her that the salad was spoiled? Perhaps, but she was very offended. And here's another question. In several teachings, the Nectar of Instruction is said not to get into politics or any isms or humanitarian causes. All right, but in the Ishopanishads, it says with the Ishavasya principle that you can get into any of those isms as long as they're God-centered. Because, yes, no, it's not beyond the scope of this talk because this has to do with Daksha. So if one is a grihasta, and if one is naturally in the field of government, then one had better be expert in the field of government. We would like, I believe we would like, to have God-conscious persons. They don't have to be Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Prabhupada says mathematics is mathematics. But we would like God-conscious persons to be running all the governments of the world. Yes? Anybody disagree with that? We would like God-conscious persons. I'm not talking about just religious people. I'm not saying, sectarian religious people, but people who are conscious of the presence of God, whatever religion they're in, to be running all the businesses of the world. Wouldn't that be nice? Imagine if, Monsanto was being run by a God-conscious person. Johnson & Johnson and Disney. We would like God-conscious people to be running the universities, yes? Am I correct? We'd like God-conscious persons to be the leaders in science. I mean, we know that Srila Prabhupada wanted that. We want the leaders in science to be aware of the presence of God, to know something of God, to have some love for God. What about all the artisans? Wouldn't we like the people who are, go to the farmer's market and you get some fruits and vegetables and flowers and buy a chair and a table and a lamp? And wouldn't it be lovely if all those people picking up your trash, if they were God-conscious people? So it's not a question that we don't want to get involved in any of the isms of this world, but that we want them to be God-centered. Because if we say that devotees don't get involved in any of the isms of this world, then we're saying that we're a world-denying religion. We're saying that we're just walking away from the world, leaving it to go its own way, which doesn't seem to be a very good way right now in 2020. And that we're simply, cloistered off in some mountain, like these monasteries in Europe that are up on top of a mountain and just have a little trap door in the floor. And they, open there really are places like this, and they open the trap door and they undo a bucket that goes down, and then somebody puts some supplies in it and they reel the bucket back up. But that's not our idea. Our idea is to re-spiritualize society, to train the world in the techniques of spiritual life. That's our idea. So we should certainly not join any faction in terms of material identification. That's explained very nicely in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, that because the devotees don't join any factions, then they're free from all pains, they're carefree. So we don't want to, I'm in this political group or that political group, or because all of them are flawed. All of them have good qualities and all of them have flaws, and we don't want to identify with them in that sense. But we certainly want to act as Krishna's agents in the world. All right, it is now, we've had an hour for this class. We could go into much further depth. The final thing I want to say is that these 26 qualities of a devotee, as given by Lord Kapila Dev, as given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sanatana Goswami, is given again in the 11th canto, and as referred to in other places, are not the only way to categorize a devotee's good qualities. So for this particular class, we've chosen to use the 26 qualities of a devotee. We got to speak about some of them. However, there are other lists. For example, when Rupa Goswami lists the 64 qualities of the Lord, he mentions that I think it's 50 of them that are also in the devotees. So that's a list of 50 qualities. Mahaprabhu lists, I think it's 9 qualities of those who are in bhava. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna is asking for the symptoms of a devotee, the symptoms of the self-realized soul, Krishna gives a list in the end of the 2nd chapter. He gives a list in the 14th chapter. Krishna also gives a list at the last 7 or 8 verses of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's other lists of a devotee that we can find besides these 26 qualities. Oh, here's a nice one that we'll just, and then we do have to end. Have heard that to develop a quality, pick a Vaishnava with that quality and glorify that Vaishnava. Have you heard this? I haven't heard it, but it sounds like a really fun icebreaker for a gathering. That we could definitely do that. I mean, maybe if we had a long workshop for the Vaishnava qualities, if we have like a 4-hour workshop or something, we can have that be, you know, a 45-minute exercise. That would be really cool. Another thing that I've done with the qualities of a devotee based on some work of Sesha Prabhu is to meditate on Srila Prabhupada and how Srila Prabhupada personified each of these 26 qualities. Okay, I need to stop now. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you very much for inviting me and encouraging me so that maybe someday I will actually develop some of these Vaishnava qualities.
You already have them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for such a wonderful, seminar about the qualities that, you know, I think we can just hear more about it and, you know, have more discussions. So it'll be fun to have more seminars like the one that we've had. Okay, we have a few questions, if I can ask them. Right, so let me just open my document. The first question is on the point on intoxication. How far is it true that coffee or chocolate is good for students? And should we or our child take coffee or cocoa-based powder drinks for better learning? In other words, is chocolate an intoxicant?
Well, chocolate is a very mild intoxicant. It does have chemical compounds that are similar to caffeine. And although caffeine certainly apparently gives you some temporary boost in mental acuity, altogether it's a very bad thing for your system. And it's something that Srila Prabhupada was not in favor of. There are some devotees who eat chocolate, some don't. But as far as coffee and tea and the sodas that have caffeine, there's, other than sometimes for medicinal purposes, they certainly do not help make you a better student overall. The long-term effect of such things is detrimental to the body and the mind. And that's somewhat off topic, although I did talk about bad qualities as similar to intoxicants. So well, sort of ish on topic.
Next question.
Oh dear, I see I have technical difficulties. You're frozen. I think I will move on to the next question. Okay, another question is, sometimes only our endeavor is not enough to deal with devotees. What can we do in that case?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Our endeavor is never enough to deal with anything. We're always dependent on the Lord. And if the question here was, that sometimes even if I'm acting perfectly, other people are not satisfied with me. First of all, I think it's very rare that any of us are acting perfectly. Generally, we have something that we can improve in ourselves. And the other thing is that we're not responsible for the result. We're responsible for the effort, we're responsible for the intention, and ultimately, we certainly cannot control how other people perceive us. We can influence it, but we can't control it. We cannot control other people's happiness. So we have an intention to please the devotees, we have intention to satisfy the devotees, because Krishna will be pleased by that. Krishna will be pleased by that intention.
That is very practical. That I think I can also apply that in my interactions with everyone. Okay, moving on to the next question. What happens to me if I am just good at giving lectures, but my living is not as the Shastras say?
Right. Well, I'm not quite sure what that means. I'm just good at giving lectures, but my living is not as the Shastra says. If what you're good at is teaching, then make your living by teaching. So I'm not quite sure what that means. If my living is not as the Shastra says, means that I'm living as in a sinful way, but I can speak nicely, then please just speak according to your level of realization and then get your life together. I think I can see these questions as well.
I lost you again because of technical difficulties. Thank you so much for the practical advice and the examples that you gave. I personally find them so relevant, and it helps me understand the qualities of a Vaishnava and how to implement them in my own life. So thank you so much, and we enjoy having. You here, and let's have many. Thank you so much for attending, and let's get together again for another session. Haribol, I shall end the session here now.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.